Somewhere in the Jordan Valley, beneath layers of dust and silence, lies a city that the ancient world considered untouchable. A city so old, so fortified, so deeply woven into the fabric of human civilization. Jericho is not just a place on a map. It is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities ever discovered by archaeologists. Some estimates stretch its history back over 10,000 years. Full sentence above, transition to the walls is subject. Rising from the desert floor like something that had no business existing in that landscape. Massive, thick, layered stone construction. This city was not built to welcome strangers. It was built to outlast them. They told every approaching army, every wandering nation, every ambitious king, the same thing. Guided by fire and cloud and a voice that spoke from beyond the visible world. Full sentence, Joshua introduced visually for first time. The single most strategic location between the Jordan River and the heart of the Promised Land. That was not a coincidence, that was a deliberate design. Transition to the nature of what is about to happen, building dramatic tension. It was not the result of superior weapons or better tactics. They should have stood outside those walls for weeks, maybe months, worn down by heat and hunger. According to the account that has survived for thousands of years, those walls came down in a single moment. Transition to the method, the battle plan. No burning, no conventional military pressure of any kind. Just one quiet moment alone at night where they wondered whether they had heard correctly. What it revealed about the woman who made a different kind of choice inside those walls. Transition to archaeology as witness. Universal application, the emotional thesis of the documentary. And the untold layers of this account. Those are the parts worth taking the time to truly understand. 40 years of waking up in the same endless landscape. 40 years of burying the people you love in sand that has no name. 40 years of carrying a promise you cannot yet touch. In the long, silent, grueling stretch of time between a promise made and a promise kept. Genesis 12:1. Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. 400 years of slavery, 400 years of forgotten promises and unanswered prayers. The plagues, the Passover, the parting of the Red Sea, the thunder and fire of Mount Sinai, the giving of the law. Numbers 13:33. We were like grasshoppers in our own sight. And that moment of faithlessness became the sentence that a whole generation would live and die under. 40 years. Do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. The people who had stood at the edge of the Red Sea and watched the water become a wall, they never saw Canaan. Deuteronomy 34:5-6. Moses' death and burial. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, but no one knows his grave to this day. Because Moses was not just a leader to them, he was the voice that had spoken for them. Transition to Joshua as leader, his emergence, while Moses held his arms above the battlefield. While 10 men saw grasshoppers, Joshua saw a promise. Moses, my servant is dead. Now therefore, arise, go over this Jordan. Every place that the sole of your foot will tread upon I have given you. Language analysis. Every place the sole of your foot will tread upon I have already given you. Joshua 3:15. The Jordan overflows all its banks during the whole time of harvest. That detail matters more than most people realize. The miracle was not given in advance to make obedience easier. The miracle was released through obedience. The river stopped. A wall of water stood upstream while an entire nation walked across on dry ground. Behind them was everything they had ever known, every hardship, every failure, every grave they had dug in the desert. Transition, the Israelites stepping onto Canaanite soil for the first time. Jericho reintroduced, now from the perspective of people standing on its doorstep. The sealed city, Jericho in complete lockdown. Everything God had said he would do, he had done. Sometimes in the face of something that makes the heart go cold with fear. The question hanging over every tent, every fire, every quiet conversation between soldiers and fathers and mothers and children was the same question. The central hanging question. Transition to what follows. Dramatic transition. The story building to what comes next. They were about to find out, and nothing they had experienced before, not the plagues, not the Red Sea, not the fire on the mountain, had quite prepared them for the answer. Jericho was not simply an obstacle. It was a civilization, a living, breathing, ancient city. They were human beings, people with families and trades and temples and fears. The city understood its own importance. It had been built to reflect that importance. It is, by many scholarly assessments, among the oldest urban settlements ever uncovered anywhere on Earth. The debate among archaeologists about the precise dating has continued for decades. But what is not debated is this. Jericho was a fortified, prosperous, strategically vital city, and something brought it down. The gates had already been sealed. That kind of lockdown does not come from confidence. It comes from fear. They had heard what happened in Egypt. They had heard about the plagues. They had heard about the Red Sea. These were not rumors from distant lands anymore. This was happening close. This was happening now. Atmospheric transition. The fear inside the city as a physical presence. Joshua 2:1. Joshua sent 2 spies secretly, instructing them to go and look over the land, especially Jericho. That single sentence contains more beneath its surface than almost anything else in the early chapters of Joshua. She lived in a house built into the city wall itself. She existed by the world's standards on the edge of everything, and she turned out to be the most important person in the entire city. The spies were exposed. The city was on lockdown, and Rahab had to make a decision. She told the king's messengers that yes, the men had come to her, but she had not known where they were from. Joshua 2:9-11, Rahab's declaration of faith. Something in Rahab had moved from fear to faith. Joshua 2:18, bind this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down. The scarlet cord in the window, the act of faith made visible, with no guarantee except a promise made between strangers in the dark. She only knew what she believed about the God who was moving toward her city. The ones who do not hold power, who do not command armies, who are not mentioned in the official records of the kings and generals. And the God who was about to do something impossible on the outside of those walls had already been doing something quieter and perhaps even more profound on the inside. Final line of script section, closing statement on Rahab, bridge between the Rahab section and the approaching march sequence. Supporting visual, the view from Jericho's wall toward the Israelite camp. Supporting visual, the spies returning with Rahab's declaration as intelligence. Supporting visual, bridging the external military story and the internal human story. Joshua had seen enough to know that when God spoke, you listened. He had watched Moses his whole life. He had seen what obedience produced and what doubt cost. So when God came to him at Jericho with a battle plan, Joshua was ready to receive it. What he was not ready for was what the plan actually said. See, I have given Jericho into your hand, its king, and the mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all the men of war going around the city once. Thus shall you do for 6 days. The distillation of the instructions, the impossible simplicity of them. None of the tools that every trained military mind in the ancient world would have reached for automatically. The great powers of the ancient world had spent generations developing the art of bringing down walls. It was brutal, it was slow, it could take months, sometimes years, but it worked, and explained to them that the strategy for taking the most fortified city in their path was to walk around it in silence. The human reality of delivering an impossible-sounding plan. A quiet voice somewhere in the back of the mind asking whether this was really going to be enough. This was a city that had been built specifically to withstand exactly this kind of pressure. The army of Israel rose early, formed into procession and moved toward Jericho. They walked around the entire city once. The trumpets sounded the whole way, an entire army, silent. The only sounds were the footsteps in the dust and the low, haunting call of the ram's horn trumpets. Every step around that city was an act of faith expressed through the body, not just the mind. Every defender on those walls must have tensed, weapons ready, eyes sharp. And then the army simply walks past. Armed men, priests, the ark, the rear guard, trumpets, silence. One circuit, gone. The psychological effect of this on the people inside Jericho would have been extraordinary and deeply unsettling. An army that does not attack, but does not go away either. That ark was not just furniture. It was a sign that something beyond ordinary military force was present. The tension inside Jericho by this point would have been almost unbearable. 6 days of a silence that was somehow louder than shouting. But something had changed. Something invisible and interior and deeply human had been shifting inside those walls, and certainty, for the people of Jericho, had been eroding since long before the first march began. Tomorrow was different. Tomorrow was 7 circuits, not one. Every soldier who had spent 6 days walking in obedient silence would have gone to sleep that night with the same thought turning in their mind. And the God who had stopped a river and split a sea and spoken from a mountain of fire had told them that a shout would be enough. All they had to do was believe it long enough to open their mouths. They rose before dawn. Joshua 6:15 tells us that on the 7th day they rose early at the dawning of the day. It was the only day that was different. Every other morning they had risen, walked once, and returned to camp. But this morning there was no returning. 7 days, 7 priests, 7 trumpets, 7 circuits on the final day. Everything pointing toward a moment of completion. By the 3rd, something was shifting. By the 4th, the people of Jericho watching from their walls would have understood that today was not like the other days. The 6th time around, the only sound was the cry of the ram's horn and the rhythmic movement of thousands of feet. Joshua 6:16. At the end of the 7th time, when the priests had blown the trumpets, Joshua said to the people, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." Joshua's command, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." The shout that rose from the Israelite camp outside Jericho was not just a battle cry. It was the sound of a people releasing everything they had carried through 40 years of wilderness and 6 days of impossible silence. Transition, the shout and the walls, the final moment before the fall. The wall fell down flat, not crumbled in one section, not breached at a gate, fell down flat. The army entering Jericho through the fallen wall. The writer of Hebrews places this event in a catalog of the greatest expressions of faith in all of Israel's history. Her methodology was considered groundbreaking for its time, using stratigraphic analysis to read the layers of the site with unusual precision. Not inward, as you might expect if the collapse had been caused by attackers pushing through from outside, but outward, away from the city. A city that had not been starved out. A city that, by the evidence of its own pantry, fell quickly. Subsequent scholars, including the archaeologist Bryant Wood, have revisited Kenyon's dating, arguing that the destruction layer does in fact align with a late Bronze Age time frame consistent with the biblical account. Something happened there, something fast and something final. The house built into the wall, marked by a scarlet cord in the window, where a woman named Rahab had gathered her family and waited. Joshua 6:25. Rahab, the harlot, and her father's household and all she had were kept alive, and she lived among the Israelites. The transformation of Rahab's status, from margin to inclusion, a thin thread of red hanging in a window, the one visible marker in a wall that came down around it. The contrast between Rahab's preserved life and the fallen permanence of the walls, the simple, declarative, impossible fact, not through military genius, not through superior force, that the only reasonable response standing in the ruins of Jericho afterward was the same response Rahab had arrived at before a single trumpet had sounded. The theological declaration, Rahab's words as the documentary's central statement of faith, and fewer still have sat with the deeper layers of this story long enough to realize how much is still left to discover once the dust has settled. Joshua 6:26. "Cursed before the Lord be the man who rises up and rebuilds this city, Jericho." Because Jericho was not just a military victory, it was something with a specific theological meaning. Sherem referred to something being set apart, devoted entirely to God, placed outside the realm of ordinary human use or benefit. Jericho was not a prize to be divided. It was an offering. The Israelites were about to inherit an entire land, but before any of that could be received with clean hands and right hearts, the first thing had to be surrendered completely. That is why Joshua's curse was not a moment of bitterness or arbitrary severity. It was a boundary marker around something sacred. 1 Kings 16:34. In his days, Heel of Bethel built Jericho. He laid its foundation at the cost of Abiram, his firstborn. 5 centuries after the curse was spoken over a pile of rubble in the Jordan Valley, a man who apparently believed that enough time had passed discovered that the word of God does not expire. Foundation and gates, firstborn and youngest. The specificity is the point, because Rahab's story did not end when she walked out of Jericho's ruins. It was, in the most profound sense, just beginning. She became part of the people, and the son born to Rahab and Salmon was named Boaz. The generosity, the grace, the willingness to extend protection and belonging to someone from outside the community, qualities that define Boaz's character, bear a remarkable resemblance to the mother who raised him. The direct connection between Rahab's character and Boaz's character. The David, the shepherd king of Israel, the man after God's own heart. Salmon, the father of Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz the father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed the father of Jesse. That is not a footnote. That is a statement about the character of God so loud it barely needs a commentary. A red cord hanging in a window, marking the place where a life would be spared while destruction came to everything around it. A scarlet thread in the window of a woman who had placed her trust in the God of Israel served the same function. The early church writers were not slow to see what the scarlet cord was pointing toward. The red thread, like the blood on the doorposts, like the sacrificial system woven through the entire Old Testament, was threading a needle toward a moment in history that had not yet arrived when Rahab tied it to her window. Rahab did not know all of that. She could not have. She simply tied the cord and trusted the promise, the forward reach of Rahab's act across time. And it is absolutely all of those things. A woman is being rescued and written into a royal lineage. A curse is being spoken that will be proved true 5 centuries later to the exact detail. And a scarlet cord is being tied in a window that points quietly but unmistakably toward a grace that was always bigger than one city, one battle, or one moment in time. There is a reason this story has survived for thousands of years. Not just because it is dramatic, though it is. Not just because it is historically fascinating, though it absolutely is, but because something in it keeps finding people. The documentary's central contemporary thesis, Jericho as universal human experience. The wall does not have to be made of stone. It can be a dream that everyone around you has quietly stopped believing in, even if you have not quite been able to let it go yourself. God did not tell Joshua, "Here is why I want you to march in silence. Here is the physics of what will happen." None of that was given. That is not a minor detail. That is the entire architecture of what faith actually requires. Not fully informed, not fully certain about the method or the timeline, fully convinced about the character of the one who made it. That is a very different thing. Think about how that march appeared from the outside. From inside Jericho, what the defenders saw was an army that did not attack. The real battle was not happening at the walls at all. It was happening in the interior lives of the people circling them. God does not always fight the way we expect him to. The definitive statement on the nature of the victory at Jericho. Her inclusion in that list is not an accident or an afterthought. It is a deliberate, inspired placement. 2 different New Testament writers writing for different audiences with different purposes, both reach back to Rahab as a primary example of something essential. She is not a footnote. She is a case study. She believed on the basis of what she had heard about who God was, and she acted on that belief before she had any proof of what it would produce. He honored it with her life, her family's lives, and ultimately with her place in the most significant genealogy in all of human history. The question is whether the people facing it are willing to keep walking when the plan looks strange, when the silence is uncomfortable. The moment of decision, the shout, is the culmination of the interior battle. It is the image of a woman on the margins of everything, tying a scarlet cord in her window in the dark, trusting a promise made by strangers, betting her life on a god she had only heard about. The distillation of the documentary's deepest message may be in the doubt that comes at day 5 when nothing has changed and the walls look exactly as solid as they did on day 1. The story of Jericho says it does. The mound rises quietly from the landscape, layered with thousands of years of human history, just earth and stone, and the patient work of archaeologists who are, even now, still carefully brushing away the dust of centuries. The debate continues. Scholars still discuss the dating of the destruction layers. After thousands of years, Jericho is still being studied, still being argued over, still pulling people toward it, wanting to understand, who have read this story not as a curiosity to be dated and categorized, but as something true, something that speaks. That is what makes this story different from so many others that have survived from the ancient world, in the way it gets remembered by someone standing in front of their own version of an impossible wall, wondering if there is any way through. And it is still being told tonight, somewhere, to someone who needs to hear it. The walls that look the most permanent are often the ones closest to coming down. Day 1 looks the same as day 6. The walls stand exactly as tall on the 6th morning as they did on the 1st, the arrival of the 7th day as the documentary's central promise. Something that has stood in your life for so long that it has started to feel like a permanent fixture of the landscape. But it does leave us with something steady to hold on to. Who turned silence and obedience into the most unconventional victory in ancient history is the same God whose character does not change with the centuries, and in a quiet way they have been falling ever since. In every story, across every generation, of someone standing in front of something impossible and discovering that impossible was never really the final word.